Hello there, Daniel here. Hope you're doing really, really good. This is the second time, actually the third time I'm recording this episode. What happened was yesterday I recorded this episode, which is a reply to Ola and John, and there's a little bit for Jay as well here. And I got something wrong the first time, so I did it a second time, uploaded it, and then all three came back to me this morning and said there's no sound. Oh my gosh. I was like, oh no, I forgot to turn on the microphone. So we are gonna get to those three three questions here, or multiple questions, three replies anyway. And before we get on with this, no medical advice here, as I always say, just general thoughts and comments that I hope will be helpful to anyone that is tuning in. And first, actually, let's start with Jay here, because this is the briefer one. Jay, just for those of you who are new here, is really concerned about sleeping very, very little, and asked me in a recent question, which was, what are your thoughts on what would you say to somebody that sleeps 1 hour per night? And for really, I don't know, you, Jay, or anybody else, more than comments and emails that I've read. So I'm try to be really super mindful of that. But that said, it is highly unusual to sleep anything less than 4 hours on a day-to-day basis. And most of the time when somebody sleeps not at all, or 1 hour per night, something like that, something kind of extreme, it is because of what's called paradoxical insomnia, where you truly you're certain that you didn't sleep at all, but you actually slept a little bit more than you thought, and that happens to a lot of people when something's happened to me is my wife has quote unquote woken me up and said, "You're snoring," and then I'm sure I wasn't asleep. I was dead, 100% sure I was awake. And so that's a little bit of paradoxical insomnia there. Now, here's the thing I thought about that I was going to share. For almost everyone that has trouble sleeping, using a sleep tracker is a bad idea, because it just brings attention to the difficulty sleeping. It leads to preoccupation and clock monitoring and things like that. But I feel that for some people that have this really extreme short sleep, if you're one of those people that you're sleeping 1 hour per night, and you would find some reassurance if you had a Fitbit that told you that, you're actually sleeping, 4.5 hours or 5 hours. If that would make you feel better, then that may be a good idea. There are some people, I can't remember names right now, but there's at least one person on the channel who said that he used the tracker, realized that he probably was sleeping more than he thought, and felt really reassured by that. So that was my thought to you, Jay. Maybe something to consider. And again, if using a tracker, and if that tracker told you that you slept 4.5 hours, 5 hours, or something like that, if you would believe that, and if that would make you feel better, definitely something to consider. Okay, I hope this was helpful, Jay, and thanks for getting back to me today and letting me know that there was no sound that previous episode. Okay, with that said, let's move on to another email. This is from Ole from a few days ago, and let me see where it's at. There it is. And this is a good question here. Here it is. Okay. So, Ole wrote the following. I've been watching your YouTube channel, YouTube user Ole, number one, and have found it very informative while I try to deconstruct sleep and my sleep issues. I'm currently working with a psychologist on CBTI, and I'm hopeful that my efforts will be rewarded with improved sleep in the weeks to come. I worked on it early 2018, and it did help, but now I'm back to having sleep issues again. One question I have is, how does hyperarousal start? Is it the initial cause of the trouble sleeping, or is it a condition brought on by trouble sleeping, worry, rumination, etc.? And then it keeps the sleep issues going, ? The reason I ask that is my insomnia. This is the third instance of it in my life. Came out of nowhere. I was sleeping great over the past 16 to 17 months with the occasional night where I'd wake up early in the morning. I learned to handle that pretty well with CBT techniques and not worry about it like I had in the past. But back on 7/12/19, I went to bed not thinking about sleep at all, not worried or stressed, consciously at least, about anything, and I could not fall asleep. I just lay there. I'd get out of bed, try to relax, etc., but after 4 to 5 hours of that, I took something to help me get a little rest. I thought it was just the one night. Well, the next night it happened again, then the next night, then the next night. Now I'm up to nearly 6 weeks with trouble sleeping, both getting to sleep and staying asleep, with only 2 to 3 nights in the mix where I haven't felt like I needed some medicine or supplement to help me get some sleep. I rarely feel tired during the day, even if I only get 3 to 4 hours of sleep, and have a hard time winding down in the evening because I'm worried about my sleep again. My doctor says that I'm in that hyperarousal state. Can hyperarousal just happen out of the blue, causing the initial trouble sleeping, or is it the result of the worry about my first few nights of bad sleep? And how does that go away? Thanks for your time and your insights on your channel. First of all, super thankful, Ole, for this question and many others as well that you've contributed within comments. Super helpful, and I know I say this a lot, but please, everyone, keep commenting and sending me emails. That's really helpful because a lot of people have the same questions that you have. Now, let's go back to the first question here, which is, how does hyperarousal start? Is it the initial cause of trouble sleeping, or is it a condition brought on by trouble sleeping? And then it keeps the sleep issues going. So this is the way I think about it. First, a little bit of terminology here. By the way, I'm not actually, I'm not a psychologist, psychotherapist, psychiatrist, but I'm, taking a really deep dive here into insomnia, and I feel I understand the terminology pretty good. And the way I think about it is, hyperarousal is kind of like a state of mind that is one step below worrying. When we're worried about something, we're clearly aware of it. We often know what we're worried about. Anxiety is kind of a step up from that. I think it's more intense worrying, and we may or may know what's causing anxiety, but it's like very palpable, very real, very obvious, most of the time. And then hyperarousal is it's like that state below worrying. It's kind of like you're preoccupied. Your mind is, a little bit hyperactive, but you may notice that. You may feel that kind of like nervous energy, that kind of like the tension within yourself, or you may not feel that at all. Like you can feel completely at your baseline, and the hyperarousal can be really sneaky. It can still be there, but you really don't perceive it at all. But that's how I think of hyperarousal, and it can be like hyperarousal can be caused by many things. It can be a positive thing, like a kid has their birthday party like the next day. They're really excited about it. They're like hyper aroused and they can't sleep. It can be something that's more stressful, like you're having a big presentation tomorrow and you don't really you may or may not be obviously aware that that's causing you some hyperarousal. And by the way, I just want to share something on a personal note here that I thought about before, but I don't think I ever talked about it. Was, I'm a physician. I actually grew up in Sweden, did my med school there, and I really wanted to practice in the States. And there are like these two big tests you have to take to come over here. And the second one I did in Finland, and I felt completely relaxed, but I couldn't sleep. It took me like 2-3 hours to fall asleep. Then I slept the rest of the night, and I was a little bit worried because I had slept much less than usual, but I did fine. But thinking back about that was definitely hyperarousal, that sneaky hyperarousal that you weren't aware of. Interesting. Okay, so sorry about that little side note, but I hope that was helpful. So that is hyperarousal to me. Now, is it the cause of the trouble sleeping, or is it a condition brought on by trouble sleeping? So I think about it this way. When somebody has never had insomnia, then it is something else. Like, it is something else than worry about sleep that is triggering it in my mind, like if not always, then in 99% of the time, I can't think of. I mean, it would be unusual to out of the blue start like worrying about sleep on a like subconscious level that causes hyperarousal. So I don't think that would happen. It would be something external. It would be like, the usual things like any stress really. Again, like work-related stress, you're moving, you have a health scare, anything changes in your life and you're worried about that on a conscious or subconscious level. And then you have trouble sleeping. And then what happens is that anxiety or worry or hyperarousal gets transferred to sleep. So now it's not the initial thing that caused the hyperarousal that is driving the trouble sleeping. It is actually hyperarousal related to sleep. That's really where it comes from, in my opinion. Now, here's the thing. So there's kind of two sets of questions here in the beginning and towards the end of this email. They're actually the same. But if we read the second set of questions here, can hyperarousal just happen out of the blue, cause initial trouble sleeping, or is it the result of the worry about the first few nights of bad sleep? Well, the interesting thing is here, what we know now when we read the second set of questions is that Ole has had 3 episodes of insomnia. And so here things are a little bit different. If somebody has had insomnia, like some people are kind of lucky, they have a mild episode of insomnia and they get past it. Maybe they don't even understand how, but they get past it and they never think about it again. Well, that's great. But for a lot of people that has had more significant insomnia, it's almost like PTSD. It's like, somewhere deep in your mind, you never forget how much trouble you had with sleep during a certain period of your life. And therefore, sleep-related hyperarousal can be much more easily triggered. It could be just, it could be something you're absolutely not conscious about that somehow makes you think about insomnia, trouble sleep again. And if you're like, even if it's not on a conscious level, you're just like, that's weird. I'm not sleeping. Like I'm sleeping less. And then, when you're sleeping less, then it becomes like more overt, sleep-related hyperarousal. You're starting to think about sleep. You're remembering that you had insomnia in the past. Then you start worrying, and then it kicks in again. So I think that's why it can seem, for somebody that's had insomnia, it could seem like the hyperarousal came out of nowhere, but it's maybe related to previous episodes of insomnia. So just sharing my thoughts there. I hope this was helpful. And now, a couple of other things. I had a lot of interaction with somebody named Ellen. She contributed a lot to the channel. And I believe it is, actually, you know what? I think I can check here because I have it open. I think it's episode pod 33. I'm going through my list here. And as I'm looking for it, the reason I'm looking for this is that Ellen, when she wrote an email to me several months ago, and she wrote to me that she was not worried. She was just like not sleeping. She was sleeping like nothing for 48 hours, or she was sleeping like 1 hour or 2 hours, and it was super bizarre to her. And she had energy during the day, just like you, Ola. And my thought was the same. It sounds like hyperarousal, and she couldn't really grasp that. But then after a while, and she took Martin Reed's course, and I think that was really helpful to her, and I interacted a lot with her as well. After a while, she realized that had been it. She had been hyperaroused. And looking back, she could see that she had actually been worried about sleep. And it is episode pod 33 where she wrote in a very nice email with some kind of thoughts on what was really helpful to her getting past her insomnia. And so I wanted to share that. And let's go back to the email. And now, how does it go away? So the question here is like, how does the hyperarousal go away? Well, basically, it's the goal for anyone that has trouble sleeping is to get to a point where you're no longer worried about sleep and you feel rested and well during the day. And as opposed to, having a goal of sleeping X amount of hours. I know I say that a lot, but I think that's really important. So I think one thing that is really important in this email from Ola is I rarely feel tired during the day, even if I only get 3 to 4 hours of sleep. And maybe that could be like one real positive there. Like if one feels good during the day, then you're getting enough sleep. I say that a lot to patients. Like, focus on that. If you're feeling good, you're not sleeping during the day, you function well, then you're getting enough sleep. And sometimes that can help. I felt there was something I said yesterday when I didn't record, when the mic was off. That was better than what I'm saying now about how it goes away. Well, I hope like just the insight of kind of like what hyperarousal is, etc., can be helpful. I'm thinking really hard here. I don't know. I think that was it. Just like focusing on how we feel during the day, and not so much how many hours sleep we sleep at night. That could be a path towards like just overall worrying less and getting past that hyperarousal state. So, okay, hope that's helpful, and thanks for your patience. And speaking of that, a really, really big thanks for your patience here to John, who actually emailed me 8 days ago today. I knew I was supposed to have done this reply to John. So here it is finally. Okay, so let me read here. Hi, Daniel. I went through CBTI last November and it helped me a lot. I realize sometimes our habits break and, we get a little loose regarding our wake-up times, etc. The cycle started regarding a stressful event, and when something gets planted in our brains like an unwanted seed, it grows and we sometimes ruminate over it. Vicious cycle for sure. Frustrating to say the least. I went through some bad stress and anxiety last year, which I know caused this, but as far as the stress and anxiety goes, I'm so much better now. But recently, the last few weeks, I experienced the sleep issue. I know from stumbling across your YouTube channel, which makes so much sense, not to put it on the pedestal. When it first hit me last year, I was really putting it high on the pedestal. Just a comment there for those of you who are wondering what John is talking about. Putting sleep on a pedestal is like ascribing so much to it, like thinking like, if I just get 6 hours of sleep, my skin tone is going to get better, I'm going to be more functional at work, I'm going to have more friends, I'm going to be more funny, I'm going to, the more we put sleep on a pedestal like that, it becomes almost unattainable. There's so much pressure to get it. So that's a little bit about that expression. Now, but after the CBT, I learned so much. I know a lot about CBT, probably could write a book about it myself. I'm doing the restriction again, trying to go to bed at 11:30ish or midnight and end up at 6. I had a problem falling asleep in the chair because of watching TV, and then off to bed. Most days I can go straight away to sleep, but wake up 3 to 4 hours later or sooner at times and not being able to fall back asleep. I get up doing the stimulus, then go back. Mostly I cannot get back to La La Land. Then last night I fell asleep on the chair and then went to bed only to have what I believe is hyperarousal. Fast pulse, but I tried not to overreact and probably fell asleep. But sleep wasn't the best. I know this requires a small tweak. I'm in top-notch shape, exercise big time in the morning for roughly 1.5 hours, and then carry on with the day. I'm 51, by the way. I know I have not been doing the things I normally do because I'm working through this. The old putting it on the pedestal thing. I don't think about it mostly, but at times when you don't have a great sleep, you feel like crap. So feeling like crap at times makes you revert back to some old bad habits. I get that part totally. I tell myself all the time, this is beatable. Only bad information we're feeding ourselves. Kind of cycle where if you feel good with proper rest mentally, you feel great. But if you have some bad stretches, it almost like it gets on your nerve. LOL. I guess, too, I know from your podcast that if you try hard, like doing things that you think are going to make you sleep, this probably backfires. But I guess the way to approach it is not to give it one bit of attention. Make sure the seed doesn't have the chance to grow. Have the attitude of, if I sleep, I sleep. If I don't, that's okay. Until we reframe our minds back to the time we didn't even care about it. So looking at this, is the bedtime restriction thing probably going to sleep on the chair causing my issue now, or attitude, or kind of both? I know as well when people are going through this, we want it fixed ASAP, but I know it probably takes a little bit time to lift. I appreciate some feedback. So overall, John here, You have a lot of insight. Absolutely. I love the part where not putting sleep on a pedestal, super important. You said here, like, if I sleep, I sleep. If I don't, that's okay. That kind of attitude is really, really good. And to answer your question, yes, I think falling asleep in the afternoon or the evening while watching TV or, just sitting on a couch or whatnot, it can really be a big deal. It may seem like it's not. It may seem like, oh, it's just a few minutes, or a lot of people tell me I don't even fall asleep. I just kind of close my eyes and rest. But those like micro sleeps, like small, episodes of sleep that we don't even record can add up. And one thing I hear a lot in clinic is like this, there's a couple in clinic and one person says, oh, I really don't sleep much during the day, maybe once in a blue moon. And then the partner says, no, you sleep a lot during the day. You fall asleep for like an hour and a half in the couch. And I'm like, that tells you a lot. We may not realize it, but it can become a lot. And so how do you deal with that? Well, the obvious thing is like, don't fall asleep during the day because then you can't sleep at night. But to kind of contextualize that a little bit more, I feel like when you're trying to like move past insomnia and sleep well again, then everything is allowed. Meaning you could get up on your toes, take a walk, get some fresh air, take a shower, play some video games. Some people like that. Snack, eat something. Basically, anything you can do to make sure you don't fall asleep is allowed, in my opinion, so that you can get back to sleep again. A couple other things. I'm in top-notch shape. It's funny. This is a lot of times people that are like very, very healthy, in good shape, kind of like health freaks, if you will, often have insomnia. And I think that's kind of related to this, like, having control of things is good in so many ways in life. That makes us productive and, makes us successful often. But when it comes to sleep, that can work against us. So just a little comment on that. I mean, it's great to exercise, of course, but I'm just a comment on how a lot of people that are really, really in great shape, healthy, are often having insomnia. And maybe another part of that could be like when we're really, really kind of worried about our health, or really want to take care of our health, and we really want to sleep and make sure we get enough sleep. That could be another reason why there's that kind of correlation I've noted. What was the other thing I thought about? This one. This is beatable, only bad information. This may sound like really, really picky, because overall I think you're super, super enlightened, John, here, and you understand everything and doing really great. But when we often describe sleep in those type of metaphors, like I want to like beat this thing, I want to crush my insomnia, I want to overcome it, and that alludes to that, getting past insomnia has to be like a battle or a fight or a struggle, and it definitely shouldn't be. The more we try to like fight and struggle, the more stronger insomnia gets. It has to be more of a like letting it go, moving past it, something like that. It's just semantics, really, but it's something to point out. Okay, actually, it's not only semantics, but I felt what I want to say there is, I think in your email, John, I don't hear anything about that, like the struggle. So apart from that very word, so mainly for other people that are tuning in here. Okay, cool. Now, I think there was another one here. There was another email from John there. He said, sorry for the long previous email, but I want to give you a little history. I forgot to mention that when we go through this, I guess sleep anxiety plays a role as well. When we hit a pillow, cause we all want that to come naturally. So I know that it plays a role. Counteract this by not wanting something to give us, can give us the opposite. That plays the same in everything. The more we want something, the more excited we get. Also, the waking part sucks in the middle of the night. But as confidence comes back, this will end. Again, the podcast, in a podcast, you said most people give you the long emails. I didn't want to be that person, lol. That's funny. So yeah, on that paragraph, I agree with everything. Absolutely nothing really to add to that. And then here we go. Here was a few more things. This is from 4 days ago. Good morning, Daniel. Since the last email, I sent a couple of things. Number one, been falling asleep on the chair again. LOL. Have to stop doing this starting tonight. If I'm watching TV or something, I'll sit on the hard floor or a chair. Keep that sleep drive up. Sleep drive equals sleep. Yep, 100% agree with that. Number 2, I know big time that attitude plays so much into this. If you go about your day not even thinking about it, things seem to be a whole lot better. If you carry it with you throughout the day, it loves the attention. I know you have to go about your day being busy, talking to friends, family, etc., the way persons normally do. Don't Google these things and look for answers. The answers are basically inside of you. Exercise, which I always do, 6-7 days a week. Stay positive. Tell yourself this too shall pass. Stay social. Don't Google. Stay routine, etc. Kind of weird thing. If you go through this, a person times that seems to internalize themselves, and you seem to search for everything, looking for that magic thing, be less social, etc. But if you think about it, the reverse happens. When you get your proper rest, you feel good, which in turn you feel like your old self again. Yeah, I agree with all that. And as I was reading this, I remember there was another thing I wanted to comment on in the initial email, where you said trying to where is that? There was something you said in the initial email that said, oh, here, I know I have been not doing the things I normally do because I'm working through this. That can be a big one too. Like when we have trouble sleeping, we are tired, we're drained, we're kind of like not so motivated and things like that. And we often say, well, I can't do this today. I'm so tired. I need to rest, which is completely understandable. And sometimes you have to, but generally speaking, and I know you know this, John, so mainly for other people, the more we kind of concede to the insomnia, if you will, the stronger it gets. It becomes it's demanding. Like insomnia wants to control your life. And like if you start like, I'm going to cancel this so I can rest, I'm going to make sure, then it kind of just takes more and more and more. So just a comment on that. Okay, next here. Also, when your sleep normalizes itself, what do you do regarding, say, flying overseas and time zones? Stay the same regarding routines? Also, in that working night shifts, I've been off work, but hopefully going back. I worked night shift before without any issues, but since the sleep thing happened, you kind of have that self-doubt about going night shift. Is it more tricky or is it more in your attitude? Please, some insight. First of all, flying overseas or across time zones, nothing. I don't have anything big there. It's really complicated, actually, in the sense of like you have your circadian rhythm shifts, your actual time is this, and the new time in the new time zone, etc. So I usually just tell people to, pick a wake up time and then stick to that wake up time in the new time zone, and then go to bed. Like spend 7 hours in bed or 6 hours in bed or whatever you're doing in the new time zone as well, and things will fall into place. Now, night shift. Well, here's the thing I thought about when I read this the first time is nothing is really different now versus then. You have the same brain, same, you're breathing the same air, you're doing the same things. Like there's no reason why somebody like yourself couldn't do night shift again. The only difference, of course, is that now you had this episode of insomnia, and it is that, you're kind of that self-doubt. But I feel like two things. Number one, again, you've done this before. No reason to believe you can do it again. Number two, which would be more important, is kind of, again, repeating something I said earlier on here. When we decide not to do something because of insomnia, it really kind of reinforces it, or like gives it power, grows it, if you will, and makes it feel like it has a lot of influence. It's weird how I'm saying that because it can't feel anything, but the more we accommodate or compromise insomnia, the more influence it has. So that's a big one, I think, to keep in mind. And next here, so yes, earlier I did CBT and it responded quite well, but for whatever reason I fell off the wagon a few weeks ago. So as far as the last email I sent you, said you have a few tips. No, not sleeping, obviously, on the chair prior to bed, not putting sleep on the pedestal, carry on with your normal life, and not worry about some bad sleep, because if you do, obviously it feeds itself. I know one podcast with that guest and the sleep method book outlines not to even worry about your bad sleep at the moment, because don't let 2 bad nights cause your whole week to go down the drain. Usually straightens itself out. Finally, I would appreciate some insight on kicking this for good. Relying on the questions above. Appreciate doing a podcast soon. Okay, so that's a great question. Like, how do you do that? Take that final step towards like not having insomnia at all. Now, it's funny. I just want to share something. Like as I'm talking here, I've gone from saying like overcoming insomnia to like moving past, getting past insomnia, and now I'm thinking maybe I should just start saying like making insomnia disappear, because that's really what you want. Like it's actually not, in a way, not so much like moving past something like an obstacle that you're moving past. It's more like making something disappear in a way. So how do you make insomnia just permanently disappear? Well, I think the following. So for somebody that has had maybe, oh, by the way, if somebody has like had trouble sleeping for 2 nights, the best thing to do is like really do nothing, like treat it like you have the hiccups and like just ignore it. That often really helps for really short insomnia. But if you had something for a couple of weeks, month, decades even, then it becomes, the first step is, in my opinion, like doing these techniques whereby you get up at the same time every day. Don't spend more than, for most people, like 6 or 7 hours in bed. Be really active during the day. And then when things start falling into place, when you're like, okay, I'm starting to fall asleep, pretty regularly, pretty fast. I sleep most of the night. I'm a little bit less worried. Like the next step after that, which can take, for some reason, for some people, 1 to 2 weeks, and they're already doing better and can start thinking about what I'm about to say. For other people, it takes 6 weeks, 7 weeks. It can take a long time. But, and by the way, it can take even more. Like, as long as you're making progress, everything's good. I just want to add that. But the next step, I really believe, is shifting attention away from sleep and insomnia. So if somebody has been like doing a sleep diary, logging their sleep times, and they're kind of like starting to build sleep confidence, doing better, then the next step in my mind is like, okay, it's time to stop logging. It's time to really focus on things you enjoy, hobbies, projects, really shifting attention away, and then it just becomes a gradual thing of like attention away from sleep, attention towards other things. And then one day you may be like, oh, I haven't thought about sleep for a while, for a couple of days or a week or 2 weeks, and then insomnia has almost disappeared. So that was that. Okay. I hope I can see that this has recorded, and sorry for the previous upload that didn't have any sound at all. And for anyone tuning into this podcast that feel like these episodes are helpful, then it would mean the world, really, if you would rate the podcast. I know some people did recently. I'm extremely grateful for that. So, okay, that said, have a really nice weekend. If you're stateside here, enjoy Labor Day, and I'll be back on Tuesday. Until then, bye-bye.